yourself?
Brian Cox with better hair.
Brian Cox with different hair. I'm not going to go with better, but anyhow, I'll let the audience judge. I've been trying to get Brad on this stage for years. Give Brad a big hand. Brad Tucker.
So yes, thanks for having me, and I do appreciate your jokes, Phil. The problem is, just like the moon, it lacked the right atmosphere. See? Now you actually appreciate his jokes more. So, I'm going to tell you who and what they want to do on the moon, and then Rod later will say why that's crap. And actually figuratively, literally mean that, because there is crap on the moon. Did anyone know that? The Apollo astronauts left all of their crap on the moon. And in fact, there has been an idea to go and mine that crap for future understanding of bacteria and life. I will leave that discussion for another day, though, I'm sure. So, this is our friend the moon. Is this the right way up or the wrong way up? First quiz question.
Wrong.
Depends on
down.
okay, where you are.
Wrong. It's upside down.
Upside down to where?
From
Which part of Earth? Aha! See, you don't even know what's in the sky tonight. So how do you know where you're gonna land on the moon? I actually really genuinely mean this. You actually have to figure out who is navigating and where you're navigating so you actually talk about landing on the right spot of the moon. Because the whole who's up and where's second is going to be confusing when you start landing on the moon. So yes, we did land on the moon, much to the demise of lots of people. And I like showing this photo for two important reasons. Most of the discoveries in this photo are related to Canberra. We have the... Yeah, there you go, thank you! We have the retroreflector mirror in the front, that the purpose of a royal tracking station down the road, well, kind of down the road, Australia-wise, was built to measure the distance to the moon. We also have the collection of the moon rocks, and I'd just like to acknowledge Ross Taylor, who passed away last month. It was Ross Taylor's work who led to the understanding of the moon and the science. And I think that's a really thing we just don't appreciate as much, is that our understanding of the moon, and therefore our understanding of the Earth, has actually come from the science of the Apollo missions. It's not necessarily the activity, the politics, the racing. It is the science that was had on the moon. And in fact, how much of that science happened in Canberra. And Ross Taylor, who did so much of that work with those moon measurements, a really great scientist that I knew a few of us in this room were lucky to know. But now, as my favorite thing to talk about, which is Rod's favorite thing to hate on, is water. That's why he's drinking beer. So, a lot of people talk about there's water on the moon. Now, firstly, what do we mean by water on the moon? We mean there is something that people have detected that glows like water. Now, you may say, how does water glow? Well, when you shine a light on the moon, and that's sun lighting up the moon, you see the reflection of certain elements. Now, the fun fact is, can anyone in this room, by light, tell the difference between ice and water and peroxide? The answer is no, you can't. So there just could be as much peroxide on the moon as water on the moon. Now, that is actually not as big of a deal as it may seem. They at least have some sort of hydrogen, some sort of oxygen. And it was actually that surprise that led to this huge race and this idea that people are going to go build rockets on the moon, because if you have hydrogen, you have oxygen, you have Elon Musk's ego, and then all of a sudden you have this way that you can go into space. And yes, Elon Musk is the best thing to Dr. Evil we had, so, that's all we got. But now people are talking about how are we actually going to use the moon as this stopover? How are we going to use the moon's lack of atmosphere? It does have a very small amount, and the lack of, or small amount of gravity, again, the moon does have gravity, to use it as, say, a space station. In fact, just last week, China and Russia have announced their own plans for this equivalent thing. So the race is very different, I should just say, than what we saw in the 60s. It's not just one or two people, there are multiple countries, all vying for what is the best spot to set up shop on the moon. Now, some people say water, other people say, well, maybe we should go to the far side of the moon where there's helium-3. Now, firstly, there is no dark side of the moon. Pink Floyd was wrong. That's what happens when you listen to a stoner. So, Pink Floyd, there is not a dark side of the moon. There is a side that we can't see. But the side that we can't see, the far side of the moon, does get sunlight. Now this is a very important note. The composition of the far side of the moon does look different from the surface. We don't see those mare, those dark areas that we see on the near side, the side that you couldn't tell what we were looking at. But we do see those areas on the moon. They just don't see them as much on the far side of the moon. So China, when it landed on the far side of the moon, wanted to see what is going on that far side. And I just like seeing this because this is the dark side of the moon in sunlight, right? This is the dark side of the moon clearly glowing like the near side of the moon. So what you may think about the moon isn't necessarily what we see from Earth. And this is the critical point. Because as these groups go to the moon, there's activity on the moon. So China has landed on the moon twice in the past 2 years. Now let's just put this in a scale. All the way up till 2019, only 2 countries had ever landed on the moon, the US and Russia. In 2019 alone, China, Israel tried, but they had what's called a hard landing, which is a fancy term for crash, landed on the moon. India partially landed on the moon. The race is very different. Not only what they're doing, but who is doing it. And I'd just like to put these 2 missions in a scale. Does anyone know what the movie Gravity cost to make? $120 million. Now, I mean, seeing George Clooney turn to space junk was worth it, but India's mission to the moon cost $92 million. It is now cheaper to go into space than make a movie about going into space. Like, this is genuinely the reality that we face. That it is now the costs are dramatically different. So it doesn't matter if your half-baked idea is right. You can actually afford to do that. You can afford to look for hydrogen. You can afford to look for water. You can afford to look for helium-3, because you might as well give it a shot. And that's where the new space race is. Who and what we're looking for is no longer what we were looking for in the 60s and 70s. But I just want to end on this last important note. And we heard about colonization. When we think about science, we have to think about what we've learned in the past. And I'll end on this note. When has the colonization experiment on Earth ever gone right?